Well, for more, we want to turn now to Joseph Moreno. He is a former federal prosecutor. So, Joseph, you see this 36-month sentence. Was this a surprise based on the nature of Cohen's crimes?
Rena, I got to say, it's serious, but it's not a surprise. The Justice Department takes white-collar crimes really seriously. People sometimes think because it's not a violent crime, you won't get much jail time. That is not true. Things like tax fraud, bank fraud, and campaign finance fraud are serious crimes, and the department takes them very, very seriously. So not a surprise there. Keep in mind, too, that Michael Cohen is a lawyer. And we, as attorneys, particularly those who have experience with tax law and campaign finance law, we're expected to know better. So a lot of those claims he made in court today, a lot of those pleadings for mercy, probably fell on deaf ears with the judge because he is expected to do better.
When you talk about the Southern District, as Paula laid out, they were unhappy that he didn't sort of show more of his cards. The Mueller team was happy with, there was a sense with some of the things that he worked with, and apparently he's going to be working with on the Russia probe. What do you think? What kind of help do you think that he will offer on the Russia probe?
It's hard to say, right? Because, I mean, think about the three cases that came to a head this month, right? You have Michael Flynn on the one end, who seemed like a model cooperator, right? He sat down 19 times. He was fully forthcoming, and he got effectively a recommendation for no jail time. Then you have Paul Manafort on the other side of the spectrum, who appears to have botched his entire cooperation agreement and is getting zero leniency from the prosecutors. In fact, he's burned those bridges.
Yeah.
Then you have Michael Cohen somewhere in the middle, right? So he was he was kind of late to cooperate. He does not have an official cooperation agreement. He even kept lying, apparently, even in his first meeting with the special counsel's office. So now, as was noted by Paula, he did get some recognition from the special counsel that he cooperated and that he gave some valuable information. But as far as what he gives going forward, hard to say, because why is it, if he has so much more, why hasn't he given that to date?
Mm-hmm. A lot of people want to know that question, that answer. We also learned of 2 campaign finance violations last week. This came through the sentencing memo for Michael Cohen, and also the fact that they were made at the direction of the president. There was a reading of the DOJ's memo that says that it implicates the president in criminal activity. The president's supporters say otherwise. How do you separate fact from fiction here? Who is correct?
Rena, you put your finger on probably the most significant takeaway from all of last week's developments, right? And that's the campaign finance angle and whether or not the president is so, quote unquote, implicated. So we learned something very significant last week, which is that the president was directing these campaign finance payments that potentially could have violated the law. Now, just because we learned that in a sentencing memo, that is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, right? That there is definitely the room for the president to have his own defense. But smart people can disagree, but there's no doubt that was a really, really significant development last week. And it has to be weighing heavily on the mind of the president and his attorneys.
Can these campaign finance violations form some sort of basis of impeachment for the president?
Well, another great question, right? I mean, we've heard from Republicans and Democrats already as to whether that is something that's a possibility in the future. Think about prosecutors have discretion, right? Prosecutors can decide when and which and how to prosecute certain cases. Impeachment is largely the same, right? It's really a political question for Congress. If Congress feels that these campaign finance violations, once we know all the evidence that's out there, constitute high crimes and misdemeanors, and they believe they want to go in the direction of potentially reversing an election, that's their decision. So there's really there's no group of right or wrong crimes that fall into what's impeachable. It's up to Congress. It's up to their discretion. Ultimately, it's less a legal issue than it is a political one. And then, of course, just because someone's impeached by the House does not mean they're ultimately removed by the Senate.
Yeah, we certainly saw that and understood that one. I want to ask you also as well about indicting a sitting president. There's a sense that this DOJ says you can't do that. Do we have a sense of what really the answer is? Can you indict a sitting United States president?
Thankfully, it's something that we've never had to put to the test because it's never been tried. Smart folks on either side of the aisle really feel very strongly about this issue, one side or the other. It's never been done before. There is a policy, as you noted, Rena, that the DOJ does not believe it can indict a sitting president. And a large part of the folks that agree with that policy say, look, there is a mechanism in the Constitution for how to deal with criminal behavior on behalf of the president. That's the impeachment function. We've seen it work with Bill Clinton, at least in the House side. We know how it works. We know how the process should run. Let's do that. If you want to try to indict a president, it raises all kinds of questions about whether or not there is the authority by federal prosecutors to do that, since they ultimately answer to the president. And of course, what happens to a sitting president in the interim? Because as we know, once you're indicted, it takes a long time for a case to go to finality. So with the impeachment mechanism in place, most likely that is the route that any kind of action will go in a case such as this.
You know, we have spoken about Michael Flynn. We've spoken about Michael Cohen. We've spoken about Manafort. At this point, Joseph, what are you watching for when it pertains to President Trump at this point with all these legal cases?
I still think keep the eye on the collusion case, right? The quote-unquote coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. That is the core of Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. That is ultimately what he is looking for. We have gone down different rabbit holes in terms of these financial crimes and possible obstruction of justice, and now campaign finance for abuses. All very serious, all worth giving attention to. But at the end of the day, is there a collusion case? What, if anything, are people like Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen adding to the evidence in that case, and where does that take us? From my mind, if there is an impeachable action here against the president, it's going to be in that realm, more likely than these various financial crimes.
All right, Joseph Moreno, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Marina. Good to be here.